Hi, my name is Jessie. Today we're going to make a video about how you transition between scenes in your Unity project. We'll go over a couple different methods, including using a button, colliding with an object, or entering into an area. And we'll transition after we do all of those things. So I've done a little bit of setup, and we can see here I have a few scenes. I have a start screen that has a canvas on it that has some text that says welcome to the game, and a button that clicks that says start. In the first scene, I have 3 little collectible objects and a door that when you touch the door, you'll transition into the next scene. My character has a script on it, so it can actually move around and jump. The second scene looks a lot like the first scene, but it has this last little special collectible object. And then once you collect that, we'll transition to the end scene, which says something like you win, which is also just a canvas. So that'll be the end of our game system. Let's start off with the start screen and talking about what kind of scripting you need to get this button to work. We're going to set up a script that uses Unity's scene management system, and the function that we call in this script can actually be used in the other 2 scenes, but we just call it in a different way based on different events. So I'm going to make a script, and we're going to call this start screen. I'm going to open it up. So the first thing we need to do is, because we know that we're going to be using the scene management system, we have to import in that functionality. So we have to bring it at the top, Unity engine.scene management. Now, what we want to do is the function that we're going to call will be run when the button click happens. So we actually don't need either of these 2 functions. We're going to make our own custom function. And so this is going to be called, we'll give it a name of load next scene. We want to pass in an argument, which will be the name of the scene that we want it to load. So when we call this function, we'll give it an argument and tell it, this is the scene that I want you to load when I click the button. Now, it's pretty easy. It's just one single line. We say scene manager dot load scene, and then we tell it load the scene with the scene name, whatever we have told it when we call the function. So we'll tell it this when we actually call the function. So the 2 important things to note here are this Unity engine.scene management, and then this scene manager.load scene is the function that we need to load the next scene. I'm going to save that. And then actually want to make sure that this is a public function. Don't forget to do that. Now in Unity, I want to associate this script with my button, and then I need to tell my button that I want it to call that function when I click on it. So I'm going to take this script and add it to my button object here. And now in the button script, I'm going to add a plus, and I'm going to drag the button object onto the game object. So we're telling it, hey, there's a script on the button itself that has a function that I want you to run. And then in our little drop down, we see we have our start screen, and then we have our load next scene function here. So the start screen is the name of the script that we made, and then we can scroll down in here and see that public function that we created, load next scene. In this argument, we need to tell it the name of the scene that we want it to load. So in this case, I have a scene called scene 01, and I will just type that in there. This is all the setup we need for the button, but if we hit play and click our start button, we get an error. And it says, scene 1 couldn't be loaded because it hasn't been added to the build settings. Now, this is a quick fix. Our build settings can be seen under File, Build Settings. And basically, we want to add in all of the scenes that we'll be using in our project. So we're going to start with the start screen. Next is scene 01. Then is scene 02. And then end scene. Once we've added all of these, you'll note that it has both their names and an integer associated with them. So if you remember in arrays, counting always starts at 0. So the first scene is numbered 0, second scene is number 1, third is number 2, fourth is number 3. We could also pass in the number of the scene if we wanted to, but I think it's nice to put in the name of the scene because you can know which scene that is a little bit more quickly. Once we've added all the scenes here, we just have to close it. And then now if I hit play to run my game, I can hit the start button and it will load in the next scene. So, okay. Let's move on to the next scene to see how we can do a similar thing, but say when we collide with our door object, I want to load the next scene. So in this scene, we have a character and it has a collider and a rigid body. We want it to collect the 3 objects and then hit the door. What we want to do here is on my character, I'm going to create a script. So I'm going to create a script. And we'll just call it scene 1. So open this up. So this scene has a few different things that we want to happen. We want to have the collectible objects disappear when we touch them. And we want the scene to transition to the next scene when we hit the door. What I want to do is, again, because I know we'll be using our scene management system, I'm going to bring in that functionality, Unity Engine.scene management. And then there's a couple things that we need to bring in. So when we need to know which object is the door and which object is the collectible item. The way that we can do that is by adding tags to those objects. So we can identify them by tagging them. So these objects in my scene are prefabs. So I'm going to open the prefab and add a tag here. On our collectible object, I have a tag called collect that I'll add. And back in my scene, I have this door and I'm going to add a tag so that I know when I hit the door. So I hit a little plus button, door, as it says. So now I have this tag available and I have to add it. So, okay. I also want to make sure that all of the objects that I'm colliding with have colliders on them, because if they don't, we don't know if we've collided. So the collectible objects already have this circle collider, but the door does not. So I'm going to add in a collider. Now the door is a box, so I'm going to add in a box collider. All right. And so now, because our character has a rigid body and a collider, every time it collides with another object that has a collider, a function gets called in the background. So that function is called on collision enter. So, okay. So we have this function called on collision enter. I'm going to delete the other functions. We don't need those. So this function gets automatically called whenever 2 colliders touch each other. One of them has to have a rigid body or else you won't be able to use this. And I'll give you a warning. If this O is not capitalized, you won't get an error, but it won't work. So check your capitals here. The syntax and the, it's case sensitive. So when we collide with an object, let's just do a quick test to see if this is working. I can already see a problem here. I've typed in the wrong onCollisionEnter script, onCollisionEnter function. We're actually using 2D scenes, so let's fix that. It's this one, the 2-dimensional one. They're basically the same, but you need to make sure that when you're in 2D, you're using the 2D one, and in 3D, you're using the 3D one. So let's just say when we collide with anything, we'll do a debug that says collision, we've hit something. So I'll save that, go back to Unity, and hit play. Okay. It's not working, and that's probably because I didn't add the script to my game object. So let's add our script over here and then try again. Okay, so we have 2 collision logs, one for when we hit the floor and one for when we hit the object. So, okay, we know that it's working. So if we think about our logic here, if we hit the collectible, we want them to be destroyed. If we hit the door, go to next scene. So let's start with the collectibles. So when we collide with something, we have all of this information about the object that we touch, and this is the collision object. So we can actually take a look at this object, at the game object, at the tag on the game object, and we can say, if that's equal to collect me, I think that's the tag. Oh, just collect, then we can do something. So the thing that we want to do is to destroy the other game object. So we want it to erase out of the scene. So we've collected it. So we'll say destroy collision.gameObject. So let's test to see that works. So we're checking the tag, and then if the tag matches what we want, we do the action that we're trying to do. So I'll save this. We go forwards. Okay, cool. We are collecting. I can get that one. And I'm destroying everything. And then when we hit the door, nothing happens because we haven't defined that interaction yet. Okay, so now with the door, we want to bring in that scene management system. So if we hit the door, so we'll check again, if the collision.gameObject tag equals door, then we will go to the next scene. So we can say, if you remember the function, sceneManager.loadScene. And then what we can do is, instead of putting it in its own function and calling the function, we can just directly put in the name of the scene that we want it to load. So we'll call scene 2. Remember, this is a string, so you want to put it within quotes. So let me save this here. Go back to Unity. Hit play. Okay, we're collecting our objects. And then we hit the door, we start the next scene. This should actually start working with our start screen as well. So if I go back to our start screen, what we'll get is we're starting to get a chain of scenes that are working together. So if I hit play, and I click start, we go into scene 1, collect my objects, and then I can go into my next scene. So you start to see how things start connecting together. The last scene we have here is scene 02. And in this example, since we're not keeping score, we're going to do that in the next video. What we want to do is say, okay, when I collect the last one, I want to go to the next scene, which is the end scene. So in this case, I want to just put a special tag on this object that says when I hit this one, go to the end scene. In the next video, we'll start keeping score. So maybe we can say you can only end the scene if you collected all 3 collectible objects. But for now, we'll just end the scene by collecting that last object. So that is the second collectible. So I'm going to add a special tag here. It says end game. And I'm going to put it on this game object. And then we can put basically the same exact script onto this character. And then we can just add in that functionality to our script. So we can say, okay, if we hit the end game object, then we're going to load the end screen. Okay. I'm going to hit save here, and this should be all we need. So I'm just going to quickly test this scene. As we go forwards, we collect the 2 objects, and then when we hit that last one, could not be loaded. Oh, I misspelled it. And see. One, 2, 3. You win. Okay. Great. So we've seen 2 different ways of transitioning between scenes. And in the next video, we're going to bring in our game management system. So we can only win the game if we've collected all of the collectible objects. And all right, I'll see you in the next video.